What's up, y'all? GH5s finally released, 2,500 bucks. A little bit too much in my opinion, but what isn't too much in my opinion is the performance of this camera. I gotta tell you, I was watching some content around this device and I was like, I need a micro four thirds sensor camera. And that's about as loud as I can say that because of all the bashing I've done, but it looks damn fine. Now, it seems to struggle in terms of autofocus performance if it's got the same autofocus performance as a GH5. But this is a super compelling device for loads of reasons, and I'm super interested in getting into that with you. But since we've started on the weaknesses of this device, I want to kind of get into these further before we move on to the really good stuff. So there is good stuff coming. Hold your horses. Not just gonna bash. First off, I'm gonna say I don't like that it's only 10 megapixels. I'm wrong, I know, because it's a video camera, not a stills camera, but I like the flexibility of being able to do both. It does have DCI 4K, but only at 8-bit 420. So the 10-bit 422 is at UHD 4K. Personally, I don't see why it would make a difference, but I'm sure someone will have a very strong opinion about it in the comments section. But that being said, not having 10-bit 422 at DCI 4K, I think is a bit of a downer. I think, you know, the big thing about this device is that, and I'm skipping ahead of myself, so I'm sorry, but the big thing about this device is that it's a great companion in many ways to like the EVA 1, EVA 1, whichever one it is. Whichever of those two options it is. But not having that color depth at DCI 4K, I think, is a loss in terms of matching to its larger cine brother or sister or relation. The 1080p 240 is, in my opinion, super compelling. Like, that could be a good reason to look more seriously at it for me. The price tag right now for me and my budget is enough to say no way. But this is a super compelling device, not only for the color depth and the resolution that you can get, but also stuff like the frame rate in 1080 at 240. That's so compelling, right? Nothing is a game changer anymore, right? We got the Phantom 4K Flex, whatever it's called, does 1,000 frames a second in 4K. But 240 1080 is really nice to be able to have. And I think that's an excellent addition and a great pair with the EVA 1. The Vlog L and hybrid HDR log, the HLG, whatever it is, you know, I think that these are a negative, actually, in my book, because we're not seeing any more dynamic range like, in my opinion, we should have seen. The reason why I would call this device a disappointment, if I were to, which I'm not, is the reason for calling it a disappointment would be that it doesn't have more dynamic range. I would love it if it would exhibit greater highlight retention, more ability to push shadows up than a GH5, but it doesn't look like we're seeing that. The Vari-Angle touchscreen, 12 frames per second, 4K photo, we're all familiar with it. The DFD, per usual with Panasonic, is subpar at best. You know, and quick sidebar, the G9 from DP Review got only DP Review's Silver Award instead of Gold, like the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, largely because the Mark II managed the performance that is nearly as good, if not on par with the G9 a year ago, and it has phase detection autofocus. Panasonic needs phase detection autofocus to really take it to the next level, and they won't get there until they resolve their issues, no pun intended, with dynamic range and with autofocus. The big thing that I think needs to be highlighted over and over and over and over and over that is so cool about the GH5s is the dual native ISO. This is one of the first cameras that we're seeing dual native ISO on that's also being made for prosumers, right? Like, the EVA 1 is not for prosumers. someone the other day called the 60 Mark II a prosumer device. That's not a prosumer device. That's a consumer device. A prosumer device is for professionals that are not using the like uber professional gear. A 5D Mark III or Mark IV is a prosumer device. It is not a professional device. A 1DX is a professional device. A Hasselblad, a GFX 50S, Phase 1, those are professional devices. So a D850, an A7R3, these can be because their upper end versions don't also have resolution and so with all of that out of the way, right, we're not seeing another camera in the prosumer space that has dual native ISO. What dual native ISO means, crucially, is that there are actually two native ISOs. It's not like a gimmick, right? You have a base ISO of 400 or 800, depending if you're using Vlog-L, and 2500 or 5000 if you're using Vlog-L. And what that means is they're like two sets of pixels. They read at zero noise at 400 and 2500 or 800 and 5000. And that is dope. That is just like mega dope. And I'm super stoked about that. The huge piece of this puzzle, though, is where it fits in. Because, you know, we've all seen the low light performance reviews, the side-by-side comparisons that were, in my opinion, poorly formatted in terms of consistency of where those bits were, but not the point. Having seen all those, I think that we can all say that obviously the A7S II is better in low light. That's not saying very much. It should be, right? In my opinion, the color preference, my color preference between the two of them vacillates. So I can't say the color is better here or the color is better there. I think that different situations are good for different color palettes, different editing tastes, whatever. So I think that we're seeing a device that could easily fit a notch below an A7S II. However, pardon me. However, things like a menu system that feels ported from another device brings down, you know, the user experience of the GH5s. There are things that can boost it back up, right? Like the dedicated red record button, which is cool, but I don't think necessary in the position that a shutter could occupy were it a more retro style device. I think there are a couple of other things that kind of bring this down a little bit. I think that being a micro four thirds sensor camera, I've seen some really cool images, some really inspiring images out of especially the Olympus Pro f1.2 image galleries lately. I think there's a lot of really cool things that I didn't realize were as possible as they are with micro four thirds. However, what I never saw in any of those was really good noise performance, was really good detail rendition, was a number of things, right? Color depth felt less, light performance felt, all that in stills. However, the ISO performance, which is a big piece of the major, you know, it's one of three tenets of the functionality of the device, right? That's been a little bit solved for. I think the time has passed of 16 megapixel sensors, and the time has come for 20 and 24 megapixel sensors and greater, and I'm looking forward to more with greater. I think, though, that the less should have had a bigger impact, right? Like, having only 10 megapixels, you should have a deeper full well capacity. You should have more ability to distinguish pixel by pixel and have less interpixel noise and confusion of the pixels. I think there should be honestly, the dual native ISO doesn't even bring it to the level of the A7S II. So as awesome as that is, it doesn't get all the way there. So, and that's a format size issue. So I think there's a lot that needs work on to really make this device worth, and the autofocus too. That's the 3.5 pillar of the device operation. You gotta have that there, and it's just not. It won't ever be as long as it's contrast detect based at all. You need phase detect on a mirrorless camera. That's a big pet peeve of mine. On sensor. But, you know, those pieces don't scream to me. With those pieces being true, this device doesn't seem to me to be a $2,500 device. It seems to me to be a $2,000 device. The thing that elevates it, right, is that it is better in low light and it does have dual native ISO, while the GH5 does not. I don't think the GH5 should be $2,000. I think that should be $1,500, and I think this should be $2,000, but that's just me. I'm a whore for full frame, and at the very least APS-C, but I won't go smaller than that, so that's my problem. I'll admit it. I think this is an awesome device. I think there are issues that should have been resolved in its development process. I think that those issues don't make it worth as much as it costs. I think that those issues, if we can see them resolved in the Mark II, would make that Mark II worth more than what they're charging for the current model. So I think that it's a very exciting space for Micro Four Thirds users, for Cine users of small sensor devices, for Panasonic fanboys, for whatever, because it's a very compelling device. And I think that's worth estimating rather than underestimating like I normally would. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. Please check out the affiliate links in the description below. It would mean a ton to me if you were to do that. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you in the next one.